Hey, folks, thank you. My first name is Jim. That's short for James. My last name is Toy, T-O-Y, as in tinker. And my last name came from my Chinese dad. So I am bicolor. I'm gay. That means I am totally bad, I am unlovable, I am sick, I am sinful, I am criminal. That is what I learned when I was growing up in the 1940s. Being unlovable, every gay man is unlovable. So how do we connect? Through anonymous sex. I hid in my closet alone, hung up on all my neuroses. But I knew the game, and I had no shame to stand in cruisy poses. And they picked me up and they peeled me down, and they told me I was so hot. But let morning come, I was only scum, and they telephoned me not. Now that all changed in 1969, beginning with the Stonewall riots in Manhattan. And I was working at the time in an Episcopal church in Detroit, a radical Episcopal church called St. Joseph's. December 69, I am typing up the church service bulletin. And on the calendar, I see a note which says, gay meeting, January 15, 1970. What could that be? There never had been a gay meeting in Michigan. So I went to the priest and I said, Daddy-o, which is what we called him in the radical years, what is this gay meeting thing? And Daddy-o said, I don't have a clue. One of the guys in the Vietnam War draft resistance group said, could we have a gay meeting here? And I said, well, whatever it is, if we can't have a gay meeting here, we might as well shut this God box down, which is what we called the church in the radical years. So, from the depths of my closet, I said, thank you. I finished typing up the Sunday bulletin. I come back to Ann Arbor. Where do I go? Right downtown to the gay bar, The Flame, which was where Logan's is on Washington Street. And there's my good buddy, John. John, there's something very strange going on at the God box. What? A gay meeting. What's that? Well, we didn't know. There never had been one in Michigan. So it's a month away. Are we gonna go? And we ambivalent about that for a month. Yes, we'll go. No, we won't go. The night before the meeting, we got together at the bar. Are we gonna go to this meeting or not? And we looked at each other and said, if we go, that means we're gay. The next day, by karma or whatever, John and I get into John's car. We drive into Detroit to the meeting. And there at the church were a dozen other women and men just as excited and scared as we were. We decided, after 3 or 4 hours of conversation, to start a formal group. And we said, we're going to call this group the Detroit Gay Liberation Movement. John and I would trek in there 3 and 4 times a week. One day we looked at each other and said, let's start a group in Ann Arbor. So we put an ad in the Michigan Daily, and about 100 people showed up. And we started the Ann Arbor Gay Liberation Front. The Ann Arbor Gay Liberation Front went to the University of Michigan and said, there is apparently here a staff office for women students. and a staff office for black students. We would like you to create an office for us lesbian and gay male students. And if you will do that, we would like it to be staffed by a woman and a man at salary parity. The university generously took a risk so enormous that I can't even encompass it. They created an office for us, the first such office in the world, let alone in the United States. And I worked there for 23 years. In the course of that time, in 1978, 2 high school students and I started the first queer youth group in Ann Arbor. We called ourselves the Little Lambdas. And we met, thanks to the generosity of Ozone, at Ozone House, then on Main Street. Ozone and Drug Help said to the Gay Liberation Front, you know, why don't we get together and have a joint crisis intervention training, which we did. And we cooperated with Ozone and Drug Help for several years. Well, now we have, in terms of youth support, all the groups and agencies that we are so thankfully aware of: Neutral Zone, Ozone House, Student Advocacy Center, Corner Health, Prevent and Prevail, lots of GSAs, PFLAG. In 1970, I'm working at the Radical Episcopal Church in Detroit and being active still in the Detroit Gay Liberation Movement, and we got a message. There is going to be an anti-Vietnam War rally downtown Detroit, Kennedy Square. We are inviting all the radical groups to march down Woodward, hold a rally, and every group is invited to have a speaker. So one of our guys said, okay, I'm glad to talk. All our groups get together at the Detroit Art Museum. We march down Woodward Avenue. We get to Kennedy Square. The groups start sending their speakers up to the speakers platform. Our guy said, I'm not going up there. We said, what do you mean? I'm not talking. What? I'm not talking. And he walked away. So we looked at each other. Someone's got to say something. Finally, I said, okay, I will say something. I had never spoken in public before in my life. It was like fire and ice. I got up to the podium. I inveighed against the Vietnam War. And something inspired me to give my name, my age, and the fact that I was gay. I, in my naivete, had not thought about newspaper reporters. The Free Press and the Detroit News had reporters there. They wrote articles about the rally. They mentioned me, my name, my age, the fact that I was gay. So I was brought out to the world, as it were. So I came out of my closet so dim to stand with my sisters and brothers, and the sum of my song is that all along we really have our druthers. We can come out now. We can come out soon. We can come out some fine day. And as we go, to the world we'll show we're TBL and gay. That was then. We've come a long way, and we still have a long way to go. We have civil rights protection in Ypsilanti, in Ann Arbor. Do we have civil rights protection across the state of Michigan? We do not, and we've been working on that for more than 30 years. So, we are pursuing justice. We are walking hand in hand up the mountain of justice. And as we go, we are walking in rainbow sunshine.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robert Stephens. I go by Robbie. I'm 20 years old and I identify as a gay male. I live here in Ann Arbor. I work at the People's Food Co-op in Sabor Latino, and I'm very excited to be here tonight. I've always been a black sheep in my family. Always outside of the herd. Speaking loudly, yet muffled, to ears tuned to misunderstanding. Still, I fought to stand in a society that tells us, shh, sit down and shut up. My queer voice is considered an additional offense. Abnormal. And in this world of perpetuated darkness, we are told blood is thicker than water. But for me, family was a word used loosely to describe people you are inseparably bound to based off the randomness of sex and marriage. Bloodlines, quickly turning to balls and chains, concocted with the idea of uniting many into one image, weighing me down with expectations and aspirations of being someone who only existed in another person's image of my future. To them, I drowned in a sea of phases and rebellion. And all of their efforts to push me to the safety of their sanctity only resulted in inverse effects, pushing me further and further below the surface. Bombardment of opinions, stated as facts. Oh, it's just a phase. You'll move past this. Well, we didn't raise you to be gay. You'll get over that. Well, guess what, people? It's been 12 years, and my wanderlust for the male figure has not been quenched. But rather, the fire inside of me that they fought so hard to extinguish has only been fanned by ignorance and bloomed with time and self-discovery. But blooming with the seed of self-hatred planted in me by those whose love should be unconditional, I became lost in my own darkness, putting my body and my sanity up in exchange for the desperate flings that I called love, trying to fill the void left by my family with boys who could barely access the knowledge stored in that melon on their shoulders, but were rather much more eager to use their other head as a moral compass for right and wrong. And I am no fool, but was just lost in my search for a peg big enough to fill the void. For even I've been caught in the fruitless traps of Grindr and Tinder, lured in with promises of things that they can only allude to. But once redemption is sought, substance seems to be lost in translation. Like being surrounded by messages and images of boys proclaiming their love for sex, while also hearing about our right to live in a free country where all are treated equally. But what happens when your free will is taken by someone who is only equal in theory? Even I, as a child, with no intentions of entering the world of sex, I had my right of choice taken from me. So, do we continue to perpetuate a world where we teach gay men and women of all orientations to wear more clothes and travel in groups, carry pepper spray to deter sexual assault? Or do we build a path to a brighter future and target offenders? Teach men to take no as an answer. Do we raise youth in a culture where love is not sacred and sex is what is left to drive our society? When I was young, my queer identifying godfather gave me a book. It was called God Says No. It's by James Hanahan. And it's about a young black man who's raised in a very strict, abusive Christian household. He goes to college and marries at a very young age because the heterosexual Christian lifestyle is all that he knows. Soon after, he realizes he might be attracted to men. I took a quote from this book where he's laying in the grass with his wife, and she's thinking about how in love with him she is. And he's thinking about how much he loves men. She found it disturbing and difficult to fathom when he repeated that the starlight they saw that night was hundreds of years old and only reached their eyes that night. It offended her that the past could intrude so literally on the present, yet never return. It's quotes like these that inspire me to take my dark past and build a path to a brighter future. Because our experiences are only a part of us. And though they can intrude on our present moments, it's our determination that drives us forward. Thank you.
My name is Fiona Carey. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm going to begin with the words of Kate Chopin from her novel, The Awakening. The voice of the sea is seductive, never ceasing, whispering, clamoring, murmuring, inviting the soul to wander for a spell in abysses of solitude, to lose itself in mazes of inward contemplation. The voice of the sea speaks to the soul. The touch of the sea is sensuous, enfolding the body in its soft, close embrace. When I first read that in high school, I had little experience with the sea, but the voice of the sea in this passage spoke to my soul. In high school, I was so in love. I was so in love with school, in love with the person I was becoming, in love with the landscape, in love with my friends, and sometimes in love with my friends. And as I was figuring out I was queer, I spent long hours in consultation with my inner muses. I journaled about it, and I wrote poems about the silhouettes of sumac trees and my friend's beautiful collarbone. And I think I must have spent just as long losing myself out the window, gazing as we drove through all the nuanced grays of November, or rolling the window down drunk on the smell of snow melt, or totally rapt, looking at purple storm clouds and feeling that just like them, I was so full of rain and I might burst. So, cut to women in literature. We read The Awakening by Kate Chopin. It's from 1899, and its protagonist is the lovely Edna Pontellier. Edna has married into Victorian Creole society in Louisiana and goes with her husband and children on vacation by the seaside. She's full of new and inarticulate feelings. She takes up drawing. She makes friends with a woman named Adèle Ratignolle. She learns to swim. She goes on a boat ride alone with a man to an island all abloom with the fragrance of oranges. In short, she has an awakening. She returns from vacation, but the awakening continues. She separates from her husband and gets her own place. In various ways, she throws social caution to the winds and does her own thing, even if she doesn't really know what that is. She feels the impulse, and she follows it. But this is not a story about this book. This is a story about an essay on this book, which is in the back of the book. And it is by Elizabeth LeBlanc. And it is called The Metaphorical Lesbian, Edna Pontellier in The Awakening. So, my 16-year-old self is sitting on the living room couch, doing the assigned reading and thumbing through, and I just see the word lesbian, so I dive in. I watched LeBlanc argue that Edna is not, quote, a tragically closeted dyke, but that throughout the book, she finds ways of actualizing herself that, taken together, make her someone who could be a lesbian, who occupies a lesbian space in the novel, who manifests lesbian potentials. As I said, she gets her own place and ditches heteronormative family structure. She's romantically unrestrained, and yet she never actually hooks up with anyone. Instead, she forgoes what was probably the option of sex with a gentleman friend to go be with her friend Adèle while she's in labor. So she's putting her female relationships first. She even befriends a certain Mademoiselle Reiss, who is old and unmarried and plays amazing piano. All of which in Victorian times would have made her the very portrait of an actual lesbian. Edna is frustrated with language. She feels desires and dissatisfactions she can't articulate. And LeBlanc says that even this recognizing the need for a new language for herself, is a form of resistance. She doesn't know how to say it, but she knows she has something to say. And lastly, at the very end of the book, Edna goes skinny dipping. She goes back to the beach and she swims far, far out, and it feels glorious. And the book ends there. We don't get to know what happens. And this had been read so many ways, all of them valid, but never before as an erotic lesbian moment. All borders are dissolved and she joins the sea completely. And best of all is LeBlanc's insistence that this is not only completely valid, but completely vital. You can read the book 100 ways at once, but your reading is incomplete without this lesbian reading. And I mean, I was so amazed when I read this piece of literary criticism. I mean, I was like full on freaking the fuck out, first kiss giddy. Because it was like having someone across the room where you're like, do you see what I see? Are you reading what I'm reading? The touch of the sea is sensuous and folding the body in its soft, close embrace. This is super gay, right? This is not the sea as mother figure. This is not the sea as the self. This is the sea as her lover. This right here is super queer. The whole book is. Reading this, for me, was in many ways fully as validating as coming out was. Eventually, I got to talk about the piece at length in class. And years later, I would tell the story to a few friends who I thought might be similarly geeked out about it. But even just reading it, it cracked something open for me. It cracked open theory. Queer theory, sure, and feminist theory, and post-colonial theory, and race theory, and everything else I was going to encounter from there on out. And frankly, I'm not even that up on my theory, but this was a precious shortcut in to valuing stories in a new way. This was the first time I could feel so viscerally in my gut that as important as the stories we tell are the stories we tell about the stories. And everybody is implicated because our stories are connected and even inseparable. I will say, as a postscript, that I still gaze out of windows. And I fucking love a good thunderstorm. And while in my book, nothing can compare in beauty to Lake Michigan, I now understand the erotic appeal of the sea. It is very sensuous. Thank you.
Hi, I am Mack Rasmussen. I am 16 years old. I go to Pioneer High School, and I use they, them, theirs pronouns and identify as a gender-fluid person. I've always used writing as a way to express my struggles with depression, my gender identity, and the struggle with finding out my sexuality. But a few years ago, my English teacher introduced me to poetry, and when I started reading it and learning how to write poetry, I was like, whoa. This is some good shit right here. Like, oh, like, sign me up. Like, let's go. Let's get into a slam. Let's start reading at open mics. Let's go. Let's get into this. So I'm going to be reading a few poems for you guys. Hope you like them. This first poem is called Where I'm From. I am from a family of almost accepting. Like, you are who you are, and that's great, but don't push it. It's safe, just enough to know that if you bring home a boy or a girl, nothing will happen. You won't be hurt. I am from a patch of dying grass in my backyard where my play structure used to be. It is still alive, but the years of being blocked from the sun are taking their toll. I am from my father's lap where I would sit and hear stories and smile, see that part of me shine. You can be yourself here with just a splash of shame. Just a little stain is all, but that comes out with the right amount of tide, like I came out in 7th grade. If you come out and nothing happens, and you're not hurt, you should be grateful, but just know that you can't go back, and it will not feel the same. Your life will always be almost accepted. So, I'm not a girl, but every once in a while I will hear my mother say, if you want to be a good daughter, go do the dishes. They say that respect is earned. Do the dishes, clean your room, fold the laundry. If you want the respect of me calling you something different than what I labeled you at birth, you have to earn it. I have to work for each one, they, them, and theirs. But the hours are so long and the day too hard, I want to quit without even giving my 2 weeks notice. Because respect isn't earned, it's lost. We do not earn our name, we do not earn our hair color, we are born with these things. And we are constantly changing who we are, who we want to be, and who we're going to be. So yes, I might not have identified as a person till just recently, but this is who I've always been. Yes, the doctor might have said, it's a girl when I was born, but I'm saying they're a person now. And I'm asking you to treat me with the respect I want, whether I earned it or not. This next poem is called Dress Up. When I was little, I would try on my mother's dresses, but my bust was too small, my hips too narrow, like if I were to move them an inch, it would fall off. I just wanted to be like my mother. To me, she was so bright, like the first street light to come on after dark. Her clothing never fit me. I grew up with the idea that I wasn't a real girl. A real girl could wear those dresses. I couldn't, so I must not be one. I have grown into the idea that I might never become a woman, but it's not because of my mother's clothes. When I was little, I would wear my father's wedding ring. I'd scavenge for it whenever he was out, put it on my hand, finger by finger, checking to see if it would fit. My hand was too small and my fingers were too thin. It would always slip off. It was my mother's dress. It hit the floor and I cried. I didn't understand why. I just wanted to be like my dad. To me, he was strong, like the tree in our backyard that didn't fall until I was 15 years old. I grew up with the idea that I wasn't a real boy, could never be a man. I did not touch the ring again until I was 16. I put it on my hand, and it managed to stay. I cried. I understood why. I have grown into the idea that if I wanted to, I could become a man. But some days it just feels like I'm putting on men's clothing. Some days it feels like I'm just putting on women's clothing. It feels like I'm just playing dress up. Okay, so this final poem is called I Am They, Them, and Theirs. She was a birthright, while he was just my rebellion. She was always there when my biology teacher would call me miss, and he showed up the first time I wore a suit. She will always left when my sister would talk about him, how proud she was of her brother, and he left at the sound of her name and every time my mother talked about her daughter. My dad will talk about her, to her, as if she is me. But Dad, I have not been her in a very long time. And my mother never met him, and probably never will, because he was just a phase, while she had been there since the beginning, but left the first time that I bound my chest, and he has been missing since I gave up on the idea that wearing a dress makes you less of a man. I have discovered that I don't have to choose. I could be both of them. because when he said goodbye and she finally let go of my hand, I was free. Thank you so much for listening.
Hello, my name's Kate, and I identify as a human being with queer chemistry.
I'm Leah. I identify as a lady queer with Leslie roots. We are both from Ypsilanti, and every show deserves a love story.
So we're gonna give you one, and we're gonna start it off, set the scene with a little love tune. The air is as close as a tire to the road, and the sun is bright, and midnight headlights, and the way is as clear as your voice in my ear, and you sing to me softly, coloring time with melody and sound of the song. Is sweet, sing along, but it's only one that we would know, 'cause we make it up as we go, and it sounds like what it feels like. La 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 la. La 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 la, lucky, lucky, lucky.
In my family, all major life events happen at my grandparents' house. All holidays, large and small, all Easter egg hunts, graduations, and weddings. I've got 19 first cousins. Every one of them who has entered into holy matrimony has done so under a tent on my grandparents' farm.
Let's just say, local tent company, they know where to shove their stakes.
Getting married on the farm is a tradition. It is assumed and expected.
But there was a day we sat across the table from her grandparents, waiting to ask permission to be a part of that tradition.
Because I can't assume or expect that the rules will apply to me, because I am getting married to that one.
Let's take it back a few steps, shall we?
Picture it. Robisonia, Pennsylvania, circa 1997.
General population, 1900.
General queer population, me.
Demographics, mostly white, mostly farmers.
Mostly consider my grandfather the unofficial mayor. We've got 1 stoplight, 5 bars, and hundreds of churches.
And there's that street that's named after your family.
High school me. I dyed my hair all of the colors, I had a goth phase, I was overly emotional and mildly depressed, all in combat boots and plaid flannel, and my parents had no idea what to do with that kid.
Pitter patter. So, combat boots? So basically you're saying that teenage Katie, ponytail and all, would have totally crushed out on teenage Leah.
Which would have been great. But coming out sucked. Home became a place I was allowed to inhabit, but not one that could accept or love a gay kid. My parents just kind of stopped being parents that day. News trickled out like you would expect it would in a small town. High school became peppered with name-calling, occasional vandalism, and my friends going MIA. Even that girl that I occasionally made out with, which just made no sense. Church sermons started morphing into my own personal public lectures on gay sin. Thanks, Mom. And I wasn't exactly barred from family events, but it was made very clear that I would not be welcome if I felt the need to bring a friend. Let's fast forward to the next 8 years. I find pride festivals, dyke marches, I discover black tank tops, odd jobs, the Indigo Girls, slam poets. Maybe I named my dog after one of them. I fell into theater and art. I had broken hearts, broken down cars, too many bars. I found a community of queers, and I chose them as my family. And I didn't really go back to the farm. And then I find myself at the Michigan Women's Music Festival where I meet Kate. Hey. Nice to meet you. Hi. What are you doing later?
It's so it's not easy to skim over the details of the beginning of our romance, but in summary,
Girl meets girl.
it's all googly eyes and fireworks.
She wrote me love songs.
She made me a quilt.
And a year and a half later, this girl moves halfway across the country.
It's true. But honestly, it was a love that was just incredibly easy to fall into. And we didn't take for granted, and we didn't question. And dare I say, was a little bit lucky. Okay. So back to the story. So family dynamics, they softened over time.
Turns out, Kate's one of the most likable people on the planet, so that helps. And I have a really good therapist, so that also helps. We were going home for holidays and whatnot, but there was still a big gay elephant in the room.
But things were getting better.
And then Dad gets cancer. And it's everywhere. Fuck. Perhaps the only blessing of a terminal illness is you have a window of time to say the things you want to say.
So shortly after, we're back at the farm, and we're sitting around the kitchen table, the three of us, and we empty a couple glasses of whiskey each. And Leah's dad turns to us and he says, "So, you two are gonna get married, right?" You see that coming?
I didn't see that
I
coming.
didn't see that coming.
Mind you, that man has never said one single supportive word about the whole gay thing. And when he does, what does he lead with? Marriage. I'm mildly annoyed, but I'm mostly overjoyed.
I thought maybe he was being sarcastic. I mean, he knows it's not legal, right?
Look, I gotta level with you. I never really saw myself as the marrying kind.
Yeah, I mean, me either. But I love a good party.
We would get to wear really fabulous outfits.
And truth be told, I mean, I would have married you right then.
That very minute.
Wait, you know we don't get a tax break, right?
Screw him, he says. You should do it anyway. And when your dad's dying of cancer, you don't say no.
So, do you want to get married?
I want to get married on the farm.
You want to get married on the farm?
I do.
All right. Well, let's make a date with Grandma and Grandpa. Ask them to host our wedding
Our gay wedding.
on the farm. All right. So, we have some news for you. Good news. We decided to get married.
To each other.
We couldn't imagine a more perfect perfect.
At this point, my grandfather starts grumbling, and I'm not sure if it's disapproval or indigestion. But we brace ourselves. I don't know, I gotta be honest with you.
I always treated you like
you
anyone
have to
else.
make a spectacle
I just
of
don't
yourself?
understand it.
I'm not gonna sit here and tell you it makes
not
sense.
gonna sit here and tell you I agree.
Because it sure as hell doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm not trying to be ugly at
But
you.
why do you need to get married? Now, what I wanted to say was, need to get married. Nobody needs to get married. But we happen to live in a cultural paradigm that is subliminized by the patriarchy that tells us to attach our sense of self-worth to our attractability and pin all of our hopes and dreams to that one perfect day. So much so that we would be willing to sell our voice to a sea witch and abandon our entire identity and personality rather than risk ending up alone. And then we wonder why it all goes south from there.
But what you actually...
No, we don't even get an effing tax break. We want to get married for the chance to stand up and say, I love the shit out of you, and I want to get old and crotchety together, while I understand that we are individuals with every right to grow in different directions. And if one or both of us falters, we have all of these people to hold us accountable to the promises that we are making here today, because that is what a wedding should boil down to, don't you think?
But what you actually...
I'm still not done. And Dad's got cancer.
But what you actually said was...
Kate, would you like to answer that?
Yes. We want to get married because, like anyone else, we want to acknowledge our love and our commitment in front of our community and our family, and it's especially important to us that those people know and understand this incredibly beautiful place that Leah comes from.
She's good, right? Grandma interjects with, so do you want to do it here?
You see that coming?
I didn't see that coming.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, we would actually.
That
That's
would
kind of why we
be
came over
wonderful.
to ask you that question.
Would that be okay with you?
Grandpa counters back with, I could answer that question right now, but she wouldn't like my answer very much. We revert to small talk and move on. Back at my parents' house, the vibe is very much like, don't worry, they'll come around. I am absolutely sure that they are never going to come around.
Until the Oldsmobile pulls into the driveway. And you can basically see Grandma. She's marching Grandpa up the porch stairs. Come in. She sits him down at the table and she says, tell him, Bobby. Go ahead. Tell him.
The man is practically forcing the words out of his mouth. But he says, any grandkid of mine can get married on the farm. That's just the way it is, and that's the end of it. It was very clear that that man had been receiving quite the verbal lashing for the majority of the afternoon. And I did feel a little guilty about that, but I had never loved my grandmother more than I did at that moment. The wedding. Whew. The wedding was amazing. A menagerie of our friends and family descended upon the farm from all over the country. They laughed with us as we shared our happiness. They grieved with us for my father. They sang us songs, they wrote us wishes, and in the end, we were like basically married by our entire community.
And I'm pretty certain that a good percentage of them saw their first live-action lady kiss that day. And as we were exiting the ceremony, personally, I was making a beeline for the air conditioning.
When our path is blocked by my grandfather, and he says, hold it right there, you two. Now, you can't tell your cousins this, but that was the best gosh dang ceremony we've ever had in the farm. And then, he hugged us.
And it was a real hug.
that he initiated.
You see that coming?
I didn't see that coming.
So, after some loosely executed wedding party choreography, I'll speak for myself there, but, and some toasts that were touching and tearful and hilarious, about 150 of us stood up and showed respect and appreciation to our hosts with a standing ovation that was potentially a touch too long for Grandma and Grandpa's humble hearts.
And then this happens.
Just a small town girl living in a lonely world.
And the dance floor parts like the Red Sea, giving way to the largest queer dance-off that town had ever seen.
Let's be honest, the only queer dance-off that town's ever seen.
And for the rest of the night, no one leaves the dance floor, including our caterer. Now, it is usually the case that the aftermath of a family wedding resembles the aftermath of a frat party, and we all come back the next day and clean up, and it's fine.
Do you know what those queers did?
You know.
They stacked the chairs, they picked up the trash, they separated the recycling. They tidied
that shit up.
So, we've heard that prior to the wedding date, Grandpa kept the news of our to-be nuptials, shall we say, in the closet.
Probably because he thought what was going to happen would resemble some sort of lesbian orgy on the dance floor, only to be interrupted by a hand of God-style lightning strike that would swallow up the entire farm and all who attended into the fires of eternal damnation.
But what actually happened was...
That day changed him. It changed an 82-year-old Catholic farmer.
It's true. And we've heard that all summer long after that he would boast to anybody that listened that he hosted a wedding.
A gay wedding.
For his granddaughters.
And it was the best damn party that farm had ever seen.
And it sounds like what it feels like. La 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 la. 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 Lucky.
Hi. You're all so beautiful. Thanks. My name is Anthony. I identify as transgender, as queer, as friendly and happy, and I use he, him, and his pronouns. I thought I would start off with a little song and tell you a little bit about myself. Looking backwards on happy times, see your reflection through all. Little trees blowing in the wind, the adolescence of it all. As I have seen it time and time again, those playgrounds have captured the fall. you believe it when they say to you, there's nowhere left in the ball, and nowhere left to fall? When the winter came, she ran. When the summer came, she'd crawl. Little flower was catching all the sun. Oh, the ecstasy of it all. Yes, I have seen it time and time again. Those playgrounds have captured a fall. Do you believe it when she says to you, there's nowhere left in the ball, and nowhere left to fall? I've seen it time and time again. Those playgrounds have captured the fall. And will you believe it when I say to you, oh, there's nowhere left in the ball, and nowhere left for me to fall. Thanks. That's kind of a little story of kind of like growing up and kind of trying to find your way when you don't really have a word for it. When I was a kid, I don't know, I didn't really want to be who I was. I wasn't sure how to not be who I was. I didn't have a word for it. I think the closest thing I could say that represented how I kind of felt, it was kind of a good analogy that I'd heard from a friend talk about one time. When you think about the show, The Bionic Man, The $6 Million Man, and The Bionic Woman. So you had Steve Austin and Lindsay Wagner, right? Well, Lindsay Wagner, that was her real name, not her character name. But, and so they were two incredible beings that were they were able to create different things about them and change things, and it was fascinating, and it made you wonder, well, could that happen to me? Well, I didn't really think about it again. Till maybe a few years later down the road. I'd been sitting around with my mom, kind of watching TV, and this was like the time Oprah just started. So it was before she was like, you get a car, and you get a car. So it was before she was able to afford giving people cars. So they had a panel of transgender people who spoke, and my mom said she remembers hearing this like whimper noise, and she couldn't figure out what it was, and it was actually me. I was crying. I was kind of like, whoa. And later we talked about it, and I just kind of said, you know, Mom, I think I was born in the wrong body. She said, well, I don't really know what that means, but, you know, maybe we'll figure it out. We didn't really figure it out for a bunch of years. You know, I went through high school. That sucked. Grade school, all that stuff. And it wasn't until I had finally kind of left home and, you know, spread my wings, so to speak, and ended up in Portland, Oregon. And I'd spent some time there trying to get to know myself a little bit better. I would go to the local lesbian bar, this great bar, and there was a bartender there that every time I would go up and order something, she'd be like, oh, thanks, sir. You know, I'd tip her and she'd be like, thank you, sir. And I'd just look at her like, why are you sirring me? Like, am I missing something? I should warn you, I didn't look like this back then. So that was probably why. But so she said, well, you'll figure it out soon enough. And I was like, okay, whatever that. So fast forward a little bit later, I'm started to go to school. Like I need to do something new. And so I was in a human sexuality class, and that week I was really okay, so I picked the class specifically because it said LGBT in it, and I just wanted any class I could take that had that in it. Little did I know that class would end up saving my life. So we had a panel that came in. It was during spring term, and I remember that day vividly because it was just so emotionally powerful. The air conditioner in the room we were in broke, so we got to go outside, and we were sitting in this beautiful courtyard and just listening to the panel share their stories and experiences. And I remember I had sunglasses on that day because, I'm so cool I have to wear shades all the time. And those sunglasses actually shaded the tears that were falling. It was like as each person spoke, it resonated and I connected, and I was just like, for the first time, I really, really understood that there were people like me, that other folks felt the same way. So I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, like this means so many different things. I remember spending hours at the library, on the internet, trying to absorb anything I could about anything that said FTM. Some weird stuff would come up too because the internet was new back then. So you had to had to be a little wary of what you were doing, but I felt like I learned a lot. And so, so I took a couple of days with all this great information I'd learned, and I decided, I got to talk to my mom about this. So I called my mom. And up to this point, I had spent 28 years of my life identifying as a lesbian, because that's all I knew. I knew I liked girls. I just didn't like them like girls like girls. Does that make sense? Okay. So I get on the phone, I'm talking to my mom, and I'm like, yeah, so this class, and remember when Oprah, and I had my aha, and my gut was like, yes, Mom, this is me. And the phone got really quiet for about 30 seconds. Might have been even longer. I couldn't remember, but she just said, I hear this, that makes more sense to me than you being a lesbian. Okay. I think my mom saw a more masculine persona in me that she couldn't quite understand, right? And so that's why she said that. And I still love her today for that. I think that was just great. Anyway, so we talked about my name a little bit, and she kind of helped me with my name. And it was a really beautiful experience. I look back from where I sit today, and I'm very, very grateful for that panel. As I said, it was a panel that saved my life. It allowed me to find out who I was and enabled me to become who I am today. I was fortunate to have a supportive family that every step of the way has been loving and embracing, and it's overwhelming sometimes how fortunate I feel. I ended up in Michigan at the #1 school for social work to get a master's degree. Didn't even think I would live past my 30th birthday. So I guess my purpose for being here today is to not only say that things do get better in life for people, but no matter what, anything is possible. You just have to believe. And when you have the support behind you, it's that much easier. So I feel really fortunate. I have a great job. I work here in Ann Arbor for a great little agency right around the corner, Connolly Counseling. I'm fortunate to work with an amazing community that allows me to give back. And I couldn't have done it without community. So with that, I just want to end with a little song that is a favorite of my mom's, kind of in honor of Mother's Day. And It's one of her favorite songs of mine that I wrote, and it's kind of, I don't know, I think it fits that life sometimes is like a river, and, you know, depending on the course of the current and how fast it's flowing, are we going to cross it and take those chances, or do we stay stuck where we are? So this is a song called The River, and thanks. And I remembered how it goes today. I watch the world around me. I paint the picture everywhere I go. The places I've been, the people I've seen, have all been mind-boggling. So why cross the river as it flows? Leading to a destination nobody knows how. I've seen the pictures in my mind. I've tasted love one too many times. Dabbled in the art of playing games and mastered the art of causing pain. So why cross the river as it flows? It's leading to a destination nobody knows. It's a long way back to childhood. It's a road nobody knows. Nobody knows. With the world as it is today, sometimes I'm not sure if I wanna stay. Confusion takes control, and I'm not myself anymore. So why cross the river as it flows? It's leading to a destination nobody knows. It's a long way back to my childhood, and it's a road nobody knows. Nobody knows. Well, it's a long way back to our childhood, and it's a road nobody knows.
My mama said that babies come in bottles. But last week she said they grow on special baby bushes. I don't believe in the storks. We know they're all in the zoo, busy with their own babies. And what's a baby bush anyway? My name is Robby. Robby Griswold. I'm a resident of Ann Arbor, and I identify as trans some days, as gay and male other days, but every day I identify as queer. For as long as I can remember, I have always been a misfit. I have memories of myself at 4 years old, creeping into my mom's bedroom and taking her necklaces off of their hooks and looking at them on my chest, and running over to her bureau and taking her scarves and wrapping them around myself and posing in the mirror like I thought she would. And I have a memory of myself at about 5 years old. It was Advent in the house, and my mother was making dinner in the kitchen, and I crept into the kitchen and I stole a bread box off of the counter and I put it on the floor, and I crept into the linen closet and took a blue tablecloth. It had to be blue. And I wrapped it around myself and I prayed over it like this. And my mother walked down the hall. Rob, what are you doing? I am praying over my baby Jesus, thank you. And Mom looked at me, blink, blink. Well, Rob, dinner's ready whenever you are. And then there was the time I was in 5th grade. I was a rotund, precocious 5th grader. And I was in my Episcopal church's Sunday school class. And the hour was getting close to the end. And I raised my hand, and Miss Mulder called on me, and I said, I have something that I would like to sing because I think that it relates to what we're learning right now. And Miss Mulder, blink, blink. All right, Robbie, go right ahead. And I got up, and I walked over to the window. It was a beautiful spring day, much like today, and I gathered all of my energy. I can open doors and take from the shelves all the books I've longed to hold. I can ask all the questions, the whys and the wheres, as the mysteries of life unfold. Like a link in a chain from the past to the future joins me with the children yet to be. I can now be a part of the ongoing stream that has always been a part of me. There are certain things that once you have, no man can take away. No wave can wash away. No wind can blow away. And now they're about to be mine. Barbara Streisand. Barbara Streisand, Yentl. Here was this Jewish woman who had to pretend to be a Jewish man in order to study the great books that her father studied and his father before him. And yet, those were my words. Somehow I knew exactly what they were saying. As you can imagine, by the time I got to high school, I was quite the thespian. And the parts that I could audition for were generally male, heterosexual, and lusting after a woman. But I had been rehearsing Barbara Streisand and Yentl since I was in 5th grade. What was I going to do with these guys? So I threw myself into the craft of acting. And I learned all about how I had to know every intention for every word that I said on stage, and had to think about all the emotional baggage that my character was experiencing that made him do what he did on stage. And that was all well and good. But what I cared about was, did I look gay? I would walk off stage from my finest performances, and I would corner my best friend Katie, and I would say things like, so, was my wrist too limp in that scene? Or the way I crossed stage, that was just really obviously gay, wasn't it? Or the way that I said that line, that was just so gay sounding, wasn't it? And whatever she said was how I would evaluate my entire performance. I became obsessed with putting my gayness in quarantine when I was on stage. When I was off stage, I was letting my freak flag fly. I had a different nail polish to go with every outfit that I wore to school. I worked at Marshall Field selling men's shirts and ties, but I spent every dime that I made on the finest makeup sable brushes and the most exquisite Estee Lauder eyeshadow palettes. I had better makeup than my friends and my mother combined. But when I went into theater club, I would suddenly square up my hips, and I would start talking with a lower voice, and I would try to butch up as much as I could. Clearly, I never really got it. It was a very schizophrenic way to live. And people say that theater can be this tool for authentic self-expression and liberation. But at that time, for me, theater was my place to rehearse being normal. It was much like how I felt when I was studying music, and my voice teacher would assign me a song like this. And sings in the morning, with waking birds she sings, a song of fairy butterflies, of flowers and kindly things. And he would say, think of this woman and how much you yearn for her. But what I yearned for was Carlos, the beefcake in my music theory class. And I would imagine him wrapping his big, beefy arms around me. And I learned then and there that being queer and in love was this rich, imaginative experience and all the hot and heavy feelings and emotions. Love was for the imagination. Love was not for experiencing. Somebody hold me too close. Somebody hurt me too deep. Somebody sit in my chair and ruin my sleep and make me aware of being alive, being alive. It was around this time, too, that I internalized this message that gay men die young. We had two options, AIDS and hate. First, there was, in my experience, there was the musical Rent, and the character of Angel, this wonderful, ecstatically wonderful character, succumbs to that disease. There was the film Philadelphia, Tom Hanks' Oscar-winning performance, we all remember it. He dies of AIDS. My drama coach even assigned me a gay monologue so that I could experience playing gay on stage. But unfortunately, the character had HIV and spent his whole monologue bemoaning, going to funeral after funeral of all his men friends who were dying from the disease. On the other hand, hate. My high school had the chutzpah to put on the Laramie Project, a story that tells how the little town of Laramie, Wyoming responds to the murder of Matthew Shepard, a young gay boy. That was around the time that Brokeback Mountain was a big hit. And all my friends were saying things like, aren't you so excited to see Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal roughing it up as gay cowboys out west? No. I hated that movie. Jake Gyllenhaal gets murdered in a hate crime for being gay. So, I just expected that I would die young. It wasn't until I was 29 that I, a gay man, was on stage playing a gay man in a love scene with a gay man who happened to be played by a gay man. It was a revelation to me to have no fear. And it was a scene in which we were figuring out what music we were going to sing at our best gay friend's wedding. Not funeral, wedding. To this day, the word funeral still almost always comes out as a habit. It is a relatively new thing for us queers to show our love that publicly without any fear. It's a relatively new thing for me now to imagine myself growing to being an old queer. I've released my fear of HIV and AIDS. I'm experiencing love. I try to take good care of myself. And whenever I get a chance, I play queer on and off stage. And so, now I can imagine myself growing old, sitting on my porch with my cats, There will be cats. Singing songs just like I used to do as a little boy. I have a place where dreams are born and time is never planned. It's not on any chart, you must find it with your heart. Never, never land. It might be miles beyond the moon or right there where you stand. Just think of lovely things and your heart will fly on wings. Never, never land. You'll have a treasure if you stay there, more precious far than gold. For once you have found your way there, you can never, never grow old. And that's my home where dreams are born and time is never planned. Just think of lovely things and your heart will fly on wings forever in never, never land. Thank you. At this time, we are going to invite representatives from these three wonderful nonprofit agencies, Amy Milligan from Neutral Zone, Nicole Adelman from the Corner Health Center, and Ali Schuester from Ozone House to speak to us about their nonprofits.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. A huge thank you to the incredible performers. And to Margaret Smith for helping put this on. So I just wanted to talk really briefly a bit about Ozone House. I think I speak for all three of the organizations up here on the stage when I say that we're so grateful, I think, for all of you to be here, for the performers to share their stories, and to continue to highlight the importance of the work that we're doing here in Washtenaw County for youth who identify as LGBTQ. So I just wanted to talk really briefly about Ozone House. As Jim Toy alluded to, we've been working on these issues for about 45 years now. We still run our 24-hour crisis line. We are in the process today of doing our crisis intervention training that was started in the 70s that we continue to do multiple times a year. We work primarily with youth who are in crisis due to housing instability and homelessness, often due to family conflict. And it's estimated that up to 40% of the homeless youth population identifies as LGBTQ. So many of these issues, many of the stories shared tonight ring very true to the work that we do. We have a safe space. It's called Pride Zone. It's a support group that's run weekly in Ypsilanti for youth to gather and share community, to get support, and to hang out together. We also provide individual and family counseling and emergency housing, and we do a lot of work to support youth who identify as LGBTQ. And again, our crisis line is 24 hours a day, and we see about 25% of calls coming in from youth who identify as LGBTQ and their families. So yeah, we're so grateful for all your support. Thank you.
can't see any of you. My name is Nicole Edelman. Whoa! I'm Executive Director of the Corner Health Center. I'm honored to be here tonight in collaboration with Ozone House and Neutral Zone. Thank you, Neutral Zone, for hosting, and Ozone House for coordinating the ticket sales, and Margaret Smith for putting on this great event, and all of you for being here. And again, all the performers for being so brave and sharing your stories. So the Corner Health Center is an adolescent health center. We serve young people 12 through 25 years old in Ypsilanti and all throughout the county and outside the county for anything they need health care for. So anything they would go to their doctor for that they may not be able to go to their doctor for if they identify as LGBTQ or plus. We also provide mental health services, youth development programs, and we really appreciate youth voice in all of our programming. We have youth on our board to make sure that all the decisions we make include youth. So thank you again, also Margaret Smith and all of you. You make our programming possible. Thanks again, and we appreciate being here.
We want to add our thanks. Here, I'm taller. Just add on to thanking the performers, and also Cynthia, who is the stage manager, and Joel, who designed our poster. And the many people who brought this together. This is the first time we've done something like this. My name is Amy Milligan. I'm the development director here at the Neutral Zone, which, other than being this venue, we are a youth-driven teen center. We have more than 20 after-school programs throughout the school year, leadership, music, visual arts, performing arts, you name it. Since the beginning of our organization, Riot Youth has been one of our most important programs. And being youth-driven, it's really no surprise that this is a program that came to the forefront immediately as something that was very, very needed, a community space, a safe space to gather. So we do have a weekly drop-in. You can just show up. No one judges you. You can be who you are. Mack is one of our teens currently. Robbie is one of our alumni. There are several more teens, alumni, parents, board members in the audience. So thanks, everyone, for coming together in support of these youth. They've really created their own space, and they are involved in outreach and activism, in doing work in the schools throughout Washtenaw County and throughout the state of Michigan. Just a few weeks ago, we drove up with a group of teens to Lansing to speak before the State Board of Education about inclusive language, supporting transgender youth. And this is certainly not the first time nor the last. We're going up again on Tuesday. We've done climate surveys throughout the school, created resource toolkits that have been disseminated in schools across the nation. I also want to acknowledge the network of these three organizations together create a web that is really essential. So the Neutral Zone, as great as our programs are, we can't provide health care. We simply can't. But thank goodness we can connect kids to Corner Health to do so. And when a kid is really in crisis and can't go home, or maybe shouldn't go home, we have our partners at Ozone House to help build that safety net so that they can come in on a Friday because they had a place to sleep earlier in the week and they had somewhere to go. So thanks to these organizations, and by coming here tonight, thanks to you as well for supporting all three of the organizations, supporting these youth in our community and beyond, who really need us to be the adults that stand there. Some families are amazing and fantastic. Some families want to be amazing and fantastic, but are struggling to do so. And some families are a lot less than amazing and fantastic. And so that is something that we can do as organizations. It's something you can do by supporting us, by getting involved, by volunteering, by donating supplies. So we hope that tonight will be a beginning and that you'll continue to engage with all three of us. So with that, I have one last item of business. Robbie.
Okay, hi. We just wanted to give a special word of thanks and a special moment for our director and fearless leader, Margaret Smith. Margaret, wherever you are, please come up. Audience. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I can tell you when I came to Margaret, when she asked me to be a part of this project, our first rehearsal, I said, I have no idea, and I feel like I have nothing to say. And I feel like I've heard similar things from many of our wonderful fellow colleagues behind me. And Margaret Smith has a way of finding out what is really important to you and then helping you develop something beyond your wildest dreams that you thought you'd ever have the guts to say, and that helps you process things that you had been packed up for years inside. And I watched myself transform through that process, and I got to glimpse into other folks back here behind me. And I just want to say that Margaret is doing a huge community service to our LGBTQ community by putting on this event in this way. So I just want to say thank you, Margaret.
Okay, and that's it. So thanks for coming. Enjoy some refreshments on your way out. Fold up your chairs. And thanks again for coming. We hope to see you again soon.